Marty Glickman was a pioneering American radio announcer who was famous for his broadcasts of the New York Knicks basketball games and the football games of the New York Giants and the New York Jets. Glickman had previously been a noted collegiate track and field athlete who was a football star at Syracuse University and who was a member of the U.S. team at the 1936 Summer Olympic Games held in Berlin, Germany. The unexplained, last-minute decision to remove Glickman and Sam Stoller from competition the 1936 Olympics, where they were replaced by gold medalist Jesse Owens and Ralph Metcalfe, has been widely viewed as an American effort to avoid embarrassing or offending Adolf Hitler, then the Chancellor of Germany, who had been directing anti-Jewish discriminatory policies since 1933. Glickman would later talk and write extensively about the controversial decision. James L. Friedman has produced a documentary film, Glickman, that was broadcast nationally in the United States in 2013. Early life. Glickman was born in the Bronx, New York, to a Romanian Jewish family. His parents, Harry and Molly Glickman, had migrated to the United States from IASI in Romania. He was a track star and football standout at James Madison High School in Brooklyn and at Syracuse University. Track career in the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Glickman was an 18-year-old member of the U.S. team in the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin, Germany, as a sprinter. Glickman traveled to Germany and spent 2 weeks practicing as part of the 400-meter relay team. However, the day before they were scheduled to compete, Glickman and Sam Stoller, also Jewish and a senior at the University of Michigan, were replaced on the 4x100 meters relay team by Ralph Metcalfe and Jesse Owens. Foy Draper and Frank Wyckoff, the 2 other runners with whom they'd been practicing, remained on the team. The U.S. team won the event by a large margin, and it is generally thought that the relay team would have won fairly easily without the replacement of Glickman and Stoller. Glickman and Stoller were the only 2 members of the U.S. team for the Olympics who did not compete after arriving in Berlin. Over the entire history of U.S. participation in the Olympic Games, it is extremely rare that uninjured team members don't compete in any event at all, and indeed after practice trials Glickman and Stoller had been assured that they would be running in the relay event. No written sources have ever emerged that conclusively account for the last-minute decision to remove Glickman and Stoller from the relay event. Glickman himself was convinced that the removal was done primarily to avoid embarrassing Adolf Hitler, the Chancellor of Germany, and the National Socialist regime he led. Under Hitler's leadership, Germany had enacted severe anti-Jewish race laws, and the profound prejudice of the National Socialist regime against Jews was obvious by 1936. With the 2 Jewish sprinters, an American team's victory in the relay would have been awkward for the German host to the Games in Berlin, their capital city. The head of the 1936 U.S. Olympic team, Avery Brundage, dismissed these allegations as absurd in a written report shortly after the Games. But David Large read more than 70 years later that, while the removal of Glickman and Stoller never bothered Brundage, it haunted the American Olympic establishment for decades after. Quote, in 1998, the then president of the U.S. Olympic Committee, William J. Hybl, honored Glickman and the memory of Sam Stoller, who had died in 1983, by presenting Glickman with a plaque in lieu of the gold medals they didn't win in Berlin. Hybl noted that although there was no written proof that the removal was an appeasement of the German regime's anti-Semitism, it was clearly the case. I was a prosecutor, Hybl said. I'm used to looking at evidence. The evidence was there. Early radio career and military service. In 1939, Glickman graduated from Syracuse University. In addition to his prominence in track and field, he was a star running back for the varsity football team. He had brief careers in professional football and basketball. He joined the radio station WHN in New York City, and by 1943 he was its sports director. Following the American entry into World War II in 1941, Glickman joined the U.S. Marines. He was an officer in the 4th Marine Air Wing from 1943 until the end of the war in 1945. Sportscasting. Glickman became a distinguished sportscaster, beginning as the voiceman for the sports newsreels distributed by Paramount News. Between 1948 and 1957, when Paramount News newsreel production ended, he covered all local, national and global sports during that era in every genre. Glickman's poetic lilt and slight New York twang made him a favorite in those early years of news production. After Paramount News, he became best known as the voice of the New York Knicks and New York Giants. He also did some New York Rangers broadcasts. In the early 1960s, Glickman teamed up with the analyst Al DeRogatis, an ex-Giants defensive lineman, to form a legendary broadcast team for New York Football Giants fans, many of whom discovered a sound reason to turn down the TV audio in the living rooms and turn up the radio, while those in the stands at Yankee Stadium held transistor radios to their ears. In later years, the WNEW broadcasts included the WNEW sports editor Chip Cipolla. Glickman and Cipolla utilized a unique format in which Glickman broadcast the offense and Cipolla the defense. Glickman also broadcast New York high school football games while he was broadcasting for the Knicks. Glickman was a longtime mentor of broadcasters. His most famous protege, Marv Albert, eventually called radio broadcasts of the Knicks, Giants and Rangers. He also helped the careers of the acclaimed sportscasters Spencer Ross and Johnny Most. In 1991, Glickman himself became a member of the Kurt Gowdy wing of the Basketball Hall of Fame. He was the second person selected for the Announcers Award. Following Gowdy himself in 1990, Glickman joined the radio station WHN in 1939 and was its sports director by 1943. When the New York Knickerbockers were formed in 1946, Glickman was the radio announcer. Later, he was the National Basketball Association's first TV announcer. Glickman was also the first announcer for the New York Nets before the ABBA-NBA merger, when they played in the first home, the Island Garden in Nassau County. Many feel he became the voice of the New York Nets as a favor to Lou Carnzecker, who left a successful stint as the basketball coach of St. John's University to be the first coach of the New York Nets. He was also the voice of the Yonkers Raceway for 12 years and the New York Jets for 11 years. Glickman did pre- and post-game shows for the Brooklyn Dodgers and New York Yankees for 22 years. Glickman was often heard on WPIX 11's telecasts of local college basketball during the winter. As the sports director of WCBS Radio in the 1960s, he briefly resurrected the ancient broadcasting art of recreation, voicing blind play-by-play accounts of segments of New York Yankees spring training games to the huddled, chill, baseball-starved masses in the metropolitan area. In addition, in the 1980s, Glickman also broadcast University of Connecticut football and basketball games for the Connecticut Radio Network. Glickman returned to college football in 1985, calling Ivy League football games for PBS. In In addition to this, Glickman covered track meets, wrestling matches from St. Nicholas Arena, roller derbies, rodeos and even a marbles tournament. NBC employed him as a critic and teacher of its sports announcers. In 1988, Glickman returned to television on NBC as a play-by-play replacement on its NFL telecasts while Protégé Marv Albert was in Seoul covering the Olympics. He retired from broadcasting in December 1992, aged 74. Autobiography and documentary film. In 1996, his autobiography, The Fastest Kid on the Block, was published. It was co-written by sports writer Stan Isaacs. On August 26, 2013, the documentary film Glickman by James L. Friedman was broadcast nationally in the United States. Martin Scorsese, the well-known film director and producer, was one of the film's executive producers. The film was well reviewed in several major newspapers. The film was released as a DVD in 2014. Glickman underwent heart bypass surgery at Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan on December 14, 2000, and died of complications on January 3, 2001. He was 83.